Hey guys, how's it going? Ricky with Tuba Da Vinci. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Sunday. Happy Earth Day, by the way, as well. And I wanted to chat with you. I have a really special guest, Alex, who you've seen before, and we're talking about some really interesting things. So, real quick, when I first started talking about AI and stuff, hey Alex, how's it going?
Hey, how are you?
So I'll be honest, like when I first heard about AI, I had a pretty typical old man reaction, which was like, "Oh, this is scary." I was just figuring out YouTube, trying to understand my little place in the world, and now suddenly everything's upside down. But I had good friends like Alex who I've chatted with, and I've realized like you can't have your head in the sand. You have to figure out how to use this stuff. And what's interesting, and I think this is makes me feel old, is I used to be like that. Like when the iPhone came out and there was this app store, or when YouTube was a big thing, I was so excited to try it and to get into it. But as you get older, you kind of when you're young, you're trying to find your place in the world. When you get older, you found your place and you want to just settle in and do your thing and not be disrupted too often. And then the modern world happened, and suddenly things change every 2 months, or in the case of AI, every week. I don't even know. I can't
Yeah,
keep track.
multiple times a week.
Since last time we chatted, I think there's been quite a few things, and I'm looking forward to hearing about it. Auto GPT, I think that
Yep.
was after our chat 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Yep.
So today, I wanted to kind of share with you guys like the importance of like a good circle of friends and community that you can hear from to get interesting ideas. Always keep those kinds of friends close. That's why I'm so honored, and I really appreciate you, Alex, for always kind of being a good sounding board for all this stuff. And I want to take a moment and talk about concrete ways you can use some of these AI tools and all the changes happening in the world for your advantage, right? If you're a writer, you're an artist, you're an engineer, there's going to be implications, but I don't think you need to think that you're gone or replaced. Instead, you should be thinking, I want to be the guy who best knows how to utilize these things to be the best I can be. And I think that's kind of the approach. And we'll walk through some kind of really cool use cases of how we use it, and then we'll kind of prognosticate on the future and what the future will look like in terms of how different companies are playing out and what we think will happen in the future. So let's jump
That
right
sounds
in.
great.
All right. So Alex, why don't we talk about catch us up? How about this? Why don't you catch us up? What has happened in the past 2 weeks or so? Alex, by the way, has an amazing channel called Ticker Symbol U. If you haven't seen Alex before, in the description there's a link to his latest video, which is a really awesome use case. I'm going to literally set up after we hang up here. But why don't you tell us what has happened in the last like 2 weeks or so? Like catch
Sure,
us up.
yeah. Yeah, so let me back up a little bit further than 2 weeks, and sort of like one of the big things that I hear a lot is the same reaction about, hey, I don't like this, it's scary, it's not interesting, it's a fad, it's whatever. And I think that's a really normal reaction. So I think one of the things that's different about generative AI in general, and then we'll talk about what's happening specifically, is that it's not like all the other things that came before it, right? So when the internet came out, or when computers came out, that was a physical device that you saw people buy and then integrate into their lives. Same with the smartphone. It was kind of this big deal that you kind of had the power of a computer in your pocket. Generative AI is like right now, for example, Midjourney, which is a powerful image generation tool, it lives exclusively inside of Discord. So like you can avoid that thing altogether and never touch it, especially if you don't want to engage with like the Discord platform. The same thing with sort of Chat GPT, right? You can just ignore OpenAI's website, and then the rest of the internet is more or less functioning as normal to you. So this is the first time where I think you're getting this major, major leap that's like sort of exclusively digital, for lack of a better word, where everything else before usually had some sort of physical tie-in, some sort of device, some sort of edge, peripheral thing that you would buy and interact within the physical world, right? So now what we're seeing is digital content getting eaten up by this thing called generative AI. And then in the last 2 weeks, that's evolved like in a pretty crazy way too, because now there are these things called auto GPTs. And auto GPTs take the whole generative AI thing and they take it one level higher. So with ChatGPT, just as an example, what you would do is you would tell it explicitly, this is what I want, right? You would give it a very detailed, long prompt, and it would give you a very specific one-off output, and then it would become a dialogue. With Auto GPT, you say, hey, here's the type of agent I want you to be, and here are your goals, and then you let it loose. It decides how to achieve those goals without you, right? So if you say, hey, open an online business, go, it'll start spitting out code for the website. It'll start making recommendations for how to grow its social media presence. It'll start saying, hey, I found all of these vendors that I think would make good vendors for the back end infrastructure of the business and so on and so forth, right? So all of a sudden, you have this tool that's completely taking the agency away from the human, unless you decide to like interrupt it and interact with it. And that's, I think, the part that's been scaring a lot of people, making a lot of news, and what we should actually talk about probably is the auto GPT type stuff.
It is really hard to hear that and not be. I mean, it's exciting, but kind of scary, right? You're talking about, hey, start a business, build me an online presence, and it does a really pretty good job. I've been messing around a little bit with code generation. I had never done that before. I was writing a little bit of Python
Yep.
code for one of the tools for our team recently, and I realized that I'm kind of rusty at writing code. So I'm like, searching for how to do certain things. And after I finished everything, I was like, let me just try one of these auto chat GPT bots. And I use Bing. We'll get into some of the different like concrete ways to get into this in a minute. And I was blown away. It wrote code. It imported the right libraries that it was, all the dependencies and stuff. And it kind of made a code, kind of a script. And I said, no, make it a function. Take this as an input, send that as an output. And okay, you got it. And it refactored everything and provided stuff you could literally just copy and paste. Now that matters because there's coding in all kinds of little things. We've mentioned, like I use Notion, I think you use Coda for managing our businesses. And there's a lot of little scripts that you can write to automate stuff. Home automation is full of it, right? There's all kinds of cool stuff you can do with whether it's like Google, the open source home kit or something, some of these different platforms. But you can write scripts to do really cool things, more than just the drag and drop simple stuff. So being able to write code is really interesting. And I have friends who will say, hey, I tried this thing out, didn't quite work. Could you finish this code for me and make it work? They won't need me anymore. Like they would be able to just kind of go, cool. Now, can you try this? Could you add that? And it does a really good job. I was pretty blown away. So I think we mentioned this 2 weeks ago, but for the first time, I'm not so sure that software engineering is going to be the hottest ticket in the world in terms of like professions, because I think we will still have them, of course, and this kind of gets to the point. But maybe you have higher level, higher paid architects who know how to leverage these tools to quickly create code instead of having like a team of tons and tons of people.
Yeah, so
So
there's somebody in the comments right now saying, when can it go to work for me? If it could, I'd get 3 jobs. And it's Earth Creature, and that person's absolutely right. So your example, first of all, is a really good concrete example. So I think that's a great jumping off point. But second of all, that's exactly what's going to happen is we're going to see companies like Fiverr, Upwork, all of these people who are good at their job are going to start being great at their job, and they're going to be able to leverage these technologies to do 10 times more, right? If I'm a logo designer, I'm using Midjourney to generate logos faster, better, get me 80% of the way there in 5% of the time, right? If I'm a writer or like a copy editor, I'm using tools like ChatGPT and Writesonic to help me do my job faster and better, specifically so I can take on more clients, right? In the same 40-hour work week, let's say. If I'm a coder or if I'm just helping people build little side projects and they need a little bit of software help, I'm going to use tools like ChatGPT and Codex to build the scaffolding for my code and then only do the parts where it's not getting it right by itself after a few tries. So I do think we're going to see people start leveraging these things. It doesn't have to be an overnight shift like yesterday it was me doing everything by hand. Tomorrow my job is automated away. But you are going to see people start being 5%, 20%, 50% more productive. Have a second hobby because now they have the time to do it. Have a side hustle or a side project because now they have the resources to do it. Teams that used to take 10 people to start a company, maybe it only takes 7, 6, 3. You know what I mean? Like there are going to be like little shifts in the way the world works, and everything else is going to have to adapt around that, right? A big thing that's going to get displaced is Google search. Not just because, ChatGPT is better than Google at searching, but because when you have an in-app copilot to do some of the things we're talking about, you're just going to leave the app less to go find an answer. The copilot inside the app is going to help you out, so you'll never have to leave it to go Google the thing and find the right thing on Stack Overflow, right? Like, that's what we're talking about here.
So maybe that's a good starting point. One of the things I never thought I would say is how cool Microsoft is. Right? In our lives, Microsoft increasingly became kind of an enterprise company. They do the business side of it well, but they were never like sexy. They don't, their products kind of didn't work out. Even though I love the Windows Phone and the Zune, but like commercially, it didn't work out. But we now live in a world where Microsoft is doing some killer stuff. So why don't we start with that? How about this? We've both watched the Microsoft keynote. We're pretty blown away. And I'll give you a concrete use case of something. And this is not exactly like the end product of work, but this is like how it could affect your day-to-day life. I was on a trip recently, and what I noticed is when I got there, I realized, do I know the hotel where I'm staying? Do I know what time tomorrow I'm starting? Do I know who will pick me up? Do I know? It's like 12 pieces of information, and it's scattered across 3 weeks of emails from several people. And it took me 25 or 30 minutes the night when I landed, and I was already jet lagged. It was midnight. I should have been sleeping. And instead, I'm on my laptop going through long email chains. I hate email chains. How have we not figured out a better way to, anyway? But like, I'm trying to figure out, okay, I need to know what I'm doing. And it just hit me that I don't have all that information in one place. So I spent 30 minutes trying to figure all this stuff out, creating calendar appointments where that was needed, creating contacts where that was needed, making an agenda, putting it on my phone so I can start rehearsing what I was going to do and stuff. It was a 30-minute pain. And one of the things that Microsoft mentioned in their 365 keynote with the Copilot is it's contextually aware of all the information that you have. So if you have Outlook for their email and you have Google Docs, if you have Microsoft Word for Word documents and Excel for spreadsheets, all these little pieces, you could just tell it, hey, go through my email from this person and create me an agenda or make a bullet list of all the really important parts, right? Because it takes a long time to go through hundreds of emails, and there's responding lines and stuff, and the body gets really big, and it would do all that automatically. So that was the night, like the next day I woke up and I thought to myself, maybe I should move to Microsoft, because seemingly Google feels behind. Will they catch up? Probably. But Microsoft, for whatever reason, just seems to be killing it lately. And Juan, if you'll show my screen, I wanna do a little live demo. What could possibly go wrong, right? So here's another thing I never thought I would say. I installed Microsoft Edge browser, which I've never in my life
Yeah.
ever done or thought of doing, right? But here is the Copilot. So I don't know if you can see my screen very well, but the Copilot lives right up here. You click on that, this prompt pops up, and you can ask it kind of to do anything. The coding example before, I'll try that one real quick, right? So can you write me a Python function that takes a file name as an input and then adds -001 at the end and returns an output. So this is kind of what I was trying to do before. I was trying to make this tool to help us with our management and our network attached storage and stuff. But what's amazing about this too is it doesn't just write code. If you look here, I don't know if you can see this very well. Can I make this bigger?
You can also use the Bing chat instead of that side pane, and then zoom in on it as if you were zooming in on a browser window.
Okay. But anyways, if you can see here, it did exactly what I was asking. And so here it did the -001. Can you change it to make the -001 update with each file? And what's really cool is it doesn't just do all of this for you. You can go back to us one. So yeah, if you see here, now it's doing the Z-fill, and here's what you need. You could just copy and paste this. And by the way, it even does the importing and stuff. And yeah, you can come back to us one. So what's amazing about what I just did there is it doesn't at first, and I can see the changes happening. When I first tried this, it would just go, here you go. Now it'll like break it up into parts and explain what it's trying to do. So it'll be like, up here, what I'm doing is I'm doing this. And then it'll be the next step. And anyway, that's all right into Microsoft Edge, the browser, and it is built in. It's free. So anybody watching right now, if you want to just kind of start using some of these prompting, or if you're trying to do research, or what was the best-selling electric vehicle in 2022, or make a table, create a table with that kind of stuff, it'll do that. And that is probably the most pain-free entry point, in my opinion. Do you agree? Like, get the Edge browser and you can start using the Copilot.
Yeah, I would say there's like only two real entry points, right? It's that and Chat GPT, and like it just depends if you're trying to do something you already do faster, or if you have some problem that you weren't able to solve with like sort of regular normal technology, and you you haven't really thought about using generative AI to solve it, I'd encourage you to see if Chat GPT can come up with some novel solutions to your problem, just because A, it has the whole wealth of humanity's knowledge up until 2021 like baked into it, and two, you can be very specific and detailed with your problem, and it will be even more specific and detailed with its solution, right? So if you're trying to use it to save time with things you already do, definitely tools like Midjourney, tools like Bing, tools like ChatGPT will help you do the coding, the writing, the image generation, whatever you were doing faster. And then the other thing is definitely if there's a bottleneck in your life, for lack of a better word, a process that you're like, man, I hate this part of the job. For me, it was the mechanical writing of my YouTube scripts. Like it's fun outlining and brainstorming cool ideas, but the actual writing down the word by word, like I'm a slow writer, I tend to rephrase a lot, I'm an over editor, but being able to take the scaffolding of a narrative, give it to ChatGPT, and then just clean it up, fact check it, and do all that stuff. Oh my gosh, like it took me from burning out to being excited to make content again. It changed my life very materially. So, because I'm a one-man show, like I'm my own editor, I'm my own writer, I'm everything. So it was a big deal to
So
me.
yeah, we're two very unique use cases because I have a writer who I've gotten licenses for some of the tools that you also use. But I've told them my goal is not to replace you. I want to make you more powerful. I want you to
Yep,
become like the greatest
totally.
writer there is. But either way, it can work either way. Juan, can you go to my screen? Here's a tool that Alex told me about called Write Sonic. And the reason why we talked about this one in particular is because in earlier models where we tried to get it to write for you, it wouldn't tell you your sources. And so if it was wrong, it was hard to figure out how it was wrong or if you could rely on it and stuff. So I think you can't see the bottom of my prompt, but here. So if you look here, here's a prompt. Can you write for me a fun paragraph to create a YouTube short on Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison and the War of the Currents? Something I'm actually doing right now. And can you also cite your sources? Okay, we'll just enter that. And so Write Sonic is a paid tool, right, Alex? You remember how much it cost?
So it does have a free version. The only difference with the free version is you have a lower limit on how many generations you get essentially. So everyone can try to write Sonic right now for absolutely free, actually.
Okay, cool. So if you look here, sure, here's a paragraph for you. Ready to witness one of the great showdowns in history? Fasten your seatbelt and brace yourself for an electrifying tale about two of the most brilliant minds of their time. That's really good, actually. I'm blown away by this, but yeah, head to head, infamous War of the Currents in the late 1800s, and then the future of powering your home, and the coolest part, the part that without this we couldn't use this, the references. Here is where they got the information from. So once you get this, you can come back to us, Juan. Once you get this, you could then figure out how accurate it is, make sure everything's on the up and up, make some changes. But isn't that cool? Grab your popcorn and let's explore the electrifying story. That all of that just from me prompting it with write a fun paragraph, right? As opposed to very academic, which is not what you want for a YouTube short. You want it to be fun. You want it to be engaging, and it just did that. So Write Sonic is a tool that we both use, and we have paid versions of it. But it's incredible because you can tell it's like, try that again or add some more. It has like memory, right? It'll keep up a little bit of a memory of your conversations and iterate on things for you. But we both use this now, and my writer says he loves it because he's able to get information really quickly. It's a good research tool. He can go in and say, create a table of the energy usage by a function as a function of source, so nuclear, solar, wind, gas, coal, whatever around the world for this year, and it goes through and does it. And it doesn't just do it; it creates like a table that you can just copy and bring into your script. You can show on screen, right? It's just incredible. That would have taken you some time before. I think you've also mentioned you'll have it read a document and figure out, like, could you summarize this for me? Is that right? You
I
do that
use
feature?
yeah, so I use OpenAI for that, but definitely the same concept. Here's this really long string of text. Tell me what's important in it. Here's this really long string of text. Give me just the highlights, or here's the specific information I'm looking for. Point me to it, right? Like one of the things I've been doing lately that's been working really well for me is just, hey, here's this book. Tell me where I can find like this specific information. I don't know exactly what I'm looking for, so I don't know like the control F what words to exactly look for. tell me what page this is on, and it'll just tell you, hey, here's an excerpt that sounds like what you're looking for. Here's the page number, right? Another thing I've been doing actually is, so I use the Right Sonic API, and I just integrated it with my Siri. So now instead of having Siri return me links while I'm driving or while I'm running or whatever, I just have Siri give me the answer and read it to me. And it's automatically copied to my clipboard. So I can say something like, hey Siri, use Right Sonic to tell me how the stock market is doing right now. And it will start writing the answer for me, orating it, and then I have all the sources that it used to generate that right in my clipboard. And so now I can take all my meetings and all my information on walks because I have this AI research assistant built into Siri that will like just get me answers in real time, you know? And I can have my phone in my pocket, it just runs through my watch and like that's it, you know? Like I have a whole second brain.
Juan, can you show my screen? So here's an example of what he just mentioned. Let's start with the article first. This is an article from Wikipedia on a sodium-ion battery, right? For me to read this is kind of fun because I like batteries and stuff, but not every single thing I research is quite this fun, right? It is pretty dense, and there's a ton of information. So this is OpenAI. This is the actual interface to the Chat GPT. So I have a little account. This is free. I don't pay for this just yet. But I just tried that out. I said, can you create a bullet list of the most important elements of this article? And gave it an article. And look at this. Now, is this every single important element? Am I done? Did I miss something? You never know, right? You might have to still do stuff. But imagine having 5 or 10 things and being able to actually have a list of the key talking points. To me, this is like having an assistant, right? Because every little thing takes time, and it might be a while before you could actually make valuable information or decisions out of it. Because, for example, let's say you're trying to make a script, but you don't really fully know the story yet. A lot of times, Alex, if you're anything like me, it might be a while before you understand if there's a story or not. Maybe there's just not enough there, right? Sometimes a commenter or one of our viewers, I'd say 80% of the time when they recommend a story, we make it. They're just so good at that. But let's say there's a story, something interesting, and then how many hours would it take you to understand if that's a fun enough story or not? With this, you could feed it 5 things, a research article, and it would go through and give you an idea of the high level talking points, right? It's like having an assistant like at your beck and call. And once I started to understand that, that's a huge, huge time saver. And that doesn't mean you're not going to have writing to do or you're not going to have more tasks, but you could quickly get to the bottom of something. Do you use Blinkist, that app that kind of, ever use that?
No, I feel like we've talked about it maybe once, but I haven't used it, no.
Yeah, so Blinkist takes like podcasts and articles and stuff, and it can give you a 15-minute summary. And it's like very curated. It's done by humans, and it's pretty intensive. I mean, I'm sure they're changing their model now, but it's a really cool way to say, okay, here's 5 related topic stories, podcasts, and I want to just be able to digest it in 15 minutes. It's like having a Cliff Note version of something. And when I was a kid, Cliff Notes felt like cheating, but the older you get, you realize, well, there's just so much information out there, and it's ever increasing. This could just help you focus on where you should dive deeper. And that's just one of those things that you can't put a price tag on that. And you want to talk a little bit about Chat GPT and how you pay? Because you do pay the API calls, right?
Yeah. So let me back up and also say here's how I use it, right? So like instead of just saying, hey, give me the most important information, one thing you can do is let's talk about 2 different things you can do. You can have ChatGPT act as somebody famous or important or smart or like somebody that you wish you could talk to or collaborate with, right? So the example that I always use in this situation is pretend you're Elon Musk with a genius IQ and you're super interested in topic X. Read this paper for me and then tell me which points are the most exciting to you and tell me exactly which sentences excite you the most. Like give me the top 5 sentences verbatim that you find exciting. So that's a little different than just getting a raw summary, like a condensed bulleted list of a paper. Now you can pretend that you're talking to your exact audience member or the professor you wish you could take a class from or your boss's boss's boss or whatever. And you could pick their brain digitally and extract like the information you want by having ChatGPT or Right Sonic pretend to be somebody specific. Another thing you can do is really tailor your prompt to exactly what you need. So the opposite approach is saying, hey, this is exactly what I do. This is exactly who I do it for. Here's the exact kind of things I do. I just got handed this big assignment with this information. Can you help me formulate a plan to like get everything done in the right order? So think about all the most important things I should do, design a schedule to do them, order the things in the right form in that schedule to make sure everything's done, and everything that's dependent on something else happens after that thing. So like the tool is as powerful as your prompts and your imagination, right? So one thing that I would say to try to do is think about how you would level up your own prompts. Instead of summarize this, explain exactly why you want that summary and what the value in it is for you, and it'll tailor that summary to what you're doing, right? So now,
So
go ahead.
in that case, is there ever too much? Like when you're prompting, can you walk us through?
Never.
So prompting AI is becoming kind of a highly valuable skill, which is a funny thing. It's kind of the
Yeah.
unintended consequences of new technology. Is that you
Prompt
get
engineer.
these prompt engineer, which is when I first heard that, I
Yeah.
thought it was interesting. But can you give us a little bit of a walkthrough on good general basics, like so now anybody, by the way, if you're watching this, you can install Microsoft Edge. You can go to open.ai, I think it is, right?
It's
The website.
chat.openai.com, I think, or
.com. Yeah, you're right.
openai.com/chat, whatever.
Yep. Right, Sonic. We'll get into Midjourney here in a second as well. But some of these tools you can get in and get started today. So like if you were afraid of how to use this and you want to get started, I really hope that you feel the motivation to just give it a go. So why don't you give us a little bit from all your learnings and all the time you've spent? I think you've just spent so much time prompting these things. Could you give us some guidelines on
Sure.
a good prompt versus a bad prompt? Is there such thing as too much? Like, should you stop? What kinds of keywords help? And while you're doing that, I encourage anybody in the audience, I'm going to generate some art using Midjourney. So the craziest, coolest idea in the chat will win, and I'll use your prompt when I do this. So leave a comment with what you want to see. Like my brother, I asked my brother, he said like a coyote driving a Ferrari convertible in the middle of the desert, something like that. Whatever crazy thing you can dream up, leave us in the comments, and we'll generate some AI here in a second. But until
I'll
then,
try
yeah,
to do the
how do
same
we-
thing too.
Sure.
Yeah.
How do we prompt our AIs and
Yeah.
what can we learn?
So a lot of people. So I think some of this came from the fact that people compare Chat GPT to Google, right? So because Chat GPT is suddenly displacing Google, everyone is trying to use Chat GPT as a search. And I think that's actually a really not good approach. You should try to talk to Chat GPT literally as if it was a human. And I know that's weird, but that's because it was trained on human written data. So it understands how to interface with humans. That's like a weird byproduct of the way it was trained and the fact that it's a generative large language model and all of these things. So instead, what you should do is you should just pick an arbitrary problem or challenge in your life. And I would encourage you to just write that into the Chat GPT box to start. Start a new prompt and say, hey, I'd like you to act as a mentor or a coach or a therapist or whatever it is like you think a human professional would need to be, or the skill they would need to have to start helping you solve whatever problem. Maybe, hey, I don't like it when this happens, or when my significant other does that, or I don't like whatever. Pick your poison. Tell it who you are, tell it what the problem is, and then just say, hey, can you help me start to solve this problem? And then here's some tips and tricks to take that to the next level. Ask it to ask you any follow-up questions it needs to get more information on how to solve your problem. Treat it as a dialogue. And if you tell it, I'm an open book, ask me more questions, ChatGPT will literally sit there and be like, well, if you told me this, I would be able to say this, that, and the other thing. And it will give you a list of questions to answer. Or if you don't want it to pretend to be somebody specific, try to feed it more specific information about you. So there's no such thing as too much, and it's an iterative process. So what you should really do is you should just brain dump the first time and see where that gets you. And you'll notice it'll ignore some information. It'll ask leading questions about other things. If there's a specific method or format you want the answer in, anywhere from a table, right? In like one case, I look at a lot of data and I'm trying to make comparisons. So I always tell it, give me the answer in a table, right? Other people really love the Socratic method. So that's where it won't tell you the answer. It will actually say, hey, here's a leading question that gets you one step closer to the answer. Khan Academy's helper bots are all built like that. They'll never say, well, the answer is 42. They'll say, well, let's try doing the thing we just learned in the last lesson first. Here's how do you think we can apply that to this question? And it will lead its students down these like prompting questions until you naturally arrive at the answer. Feel free to do that in ChatGPT. Just say, hey, use the Socratic method to help me get to the answer myself. So the more you can do, the more creative you can get with the prompt, detailed, specific, creative, the more you'll get out of this tool and the less you'll treat it like search. So hopefully that made sense as like a little primer on how to get a lot of value out of it right away.
So that's really valuable because that was really hard for me. I've never chatted with a computer like a person. That's
Yeah.
not normally how. You're much better off in the past when it wasn't real AI. It was more just if-else statements and logic trees. It was better to be very concise and kind of think like a robot, think logically in terms of like ones and zeros. But now you're actually, dealing with a large language model and it's completely different. So here is, Juan, can you put the comment about Leonardo da Vinci on a laptop on the screen? So our prompt mid-journey art, here's one of them. This is, who's that from? Wyatt, right? He says, imagine Leonardo da Vinci typing on a laptop, trying to work out the perfect prompt so AI will design a flying machine for him. Love it. And look at this. This is what it came up with. And I got to tell you, these are all pretty cool. I really like the first one. So maybe we'll try a variation on number 1 there. And then can you do the next one with the green monkey? Put that on screen. All right, so we'll this is wild. I can't believe how I really like that picture. I mean, Leonardo looks kind of like a buff bodybuilder. I don't know if that's exactly quite right, but it's decent. And this one was a green monkey with sunglasses eating a blue egg dangling from a fork while snowboarding on a mountain in the middle of the desert. And I'll tell you what, I think number 4 is our winner, and that's actually gorgeous. That would be a cool t-shirt right there. So I don't know if, if there's legal ramifications to that, but boom, I'd wear that t-shirt. That's pretty cool. Number 4. Okay, so we'll do a upscaled version of number 4 as well. You can come back to us one. So those are two prompts you guys have given us so far, and the end result, which is freaking crazy. Do you use a lot of Midjourney, or are you more about the written and research part?
I'm more about the written and research part right now. I have a subscription to Midjourney. I'm trying to recreate some of these things for myself on the fly here on the side. I do like Midjourney, but like just because I tend to focus more on engineering, science, and AI, I tend to rely more on the text-based tools right now.
Yeah,
I'm
it makes
curious
sense.
to see
I
if
think
can.
I found more value there as well. I have tried to get some, because some of our topics are very abstract. Sometimes they don't exist. So it's hard to come up with thumbnails. Alex helps me often, as does Matt Farrell, on coming up with ways to make enticing titles and thumbnails on things that don't exist. But I have started to use Midjourney, and I think, by the way, Juan, there's also a tool that someone was telling me about that runs locally on your machine, and it's more, you can train it for your own personal data set, so you can get kind of interesting stuff. So we might start doing that as well. But Midjourney, really quick, we can do a little summary on Midjourney. Midjourney is using a technology called Stable Diffusion. I think they have a really cool platform because it's really easy to use. The one thing that's weird about it is it runs on Discord, which is kind of crazy. So anybody who doesn't have Discord, you'd have to sign up with an account with Discord, and then you set it up and join the Midjourney server, and you'd have access to it. And if you have a paid account, what's really cool is you can chat with the bot directly, so it's a little more private. You're in your own room. And what I did is I invited Midjourney into a server that I made for my team, but unfortunately that doesn't quite work because every person's prompt relies on their account. So each person would have to have an account on Midjourney. Anyway, that's a small implementation detail, but you can do it for free. You can get started. You'll be in long queues. You might have to wait a little bit because of how much workflow there is on their servers. But when your time comes up, it creates art like the ones we just saw, and it's pretty crazy. So if you're an artist, 2 or 3 weeks ago I'd have been like, oh my gosh, if you're an artist, it was already hard enough. Now you're not needed. I think no. Now you have the opportunity to come up with some really cool stuff and iterate quickly and come up with 100 designs, make more, like to your point, Alex, make more t-shirts, right? I've never had a lot of success with merch because I've never really known what to sell, but maybe in every video I find the funniest or quirkiest or interesting thing and have Midjourney like spit out art around it. So for example, we made a video on water vapor towers. Yeah, I made a video on water vapor towers that are kind of these towers that harness some of the high humidity air right over oceans and stuff. It's an abstract idea, and it doesn't. They haven't built one yet, so that was tricky. But I had some ideas while doing the thumbnail, and now I might be motivated enough to try to take a stab at making T-shirts and stuff. And so could all of you, right? So Chris
I
Kelly
sent
says, "How do you use Discord?" Just set up an account, tutorials. Do you have a video? I don't have a video, but if you just literally put "How do you use Discord" on YouTube, you'll find millions of videos on it. Discord is a really cool, kind of hip chat client that has so many features and bots and things you can invite to do cool stuff and automate things. It's really popular in younger communities. It started out in gaming, but we use it for our team. So there's really cool value there. And we have a Discord community. Alex has a Discord community. So if you're really into the AI, the tech, the investing stuff, Alex has a community on Discord. We have one more focused on energy, whether it's solar or batteries, electric cars, stuff like that, net zero homes. But these Discord communities are great places to get tons of information. And in fact, if you join the Midjourney Discord, you'll have access to all the people trying this stuff out. And what's really interesting, and I think this is why at first I was like, Midjourney, why can't I just have an account and talk to the website? Why do I have to be on Discord? But the one really valuable tool about being on Discord is you get to see all the people in the public group, all their prompts and how it turns out and what they do with it. So if you just start scrolling, you'll come up with like, oh my God, that is so clever. One of my favorite design aesthetics is a cyberpunk look. So it's a lot of like blue and red neon colors and stuff. And I tried some prompts and I was just blown away with some of the stuff that it came up with. Like, I'm not sure that this looks like me, but Juan, can you show my screen? Let me show you how this started. I took this picture of myself, right? And I said, do a cyberpunk. I think the prompt was, I tried some different characters in anime. The anime characters didn't work out very well. I tried a combination of me and Kobe Bryant, but look at this one. So this is, take that picture of me and do a cyberpunk style avatar icon. That's what I kind of told it. And look what it came up with. Now, I'm not convinced that looks like me. It looks like, I don't know, it maybe partially resembles me. But look at that. How cool would that be as an avatar icon? So like, you can start to create assets for your website. Maybe you're building a new website to showcase some new thing you're selling, t-shirts, whatever it is. You could have this really quickly give you some cool, fresh designs and stuff. T-shirt design is one of the first things that came to mind because coming up with a really good-looking t-shirt is hard. But you might have a concept for an idea. And if you're a person who's better with words than visuals, that is a great case for this because you could really spell out. Juan, if you have any other cool prompts in the chat, we can try another one.
I
But
sent
if
you
you're a
the
person,
Leonardo da Vinci one, by the way. If you go to my chat with you in Discord, I gave you my best attempt at making Leonardo da Vinci that prompt in like 5 seconds. But
all right, so that's really interesting. Can you show my screen? So what was your prompt? Like, what did you enter?
I'll send it to you in Discord right now, just so
Okay.
people have it.
So this kind of looks like Dumbledore from Harry Potter a little bit.
Yeah, it does.
But some of these do look more like Leonardo, and he's sitting there. So the dichotomy of an old Renaissance guy from the past sitting in front of a modern workstation with an old draft paper and pencil and a modern. It's just such a cool thing. It clearly looks. I don't think you're going for. Obviously, you're not going for reality if you're going Leonardo da Vinci talking to AI, but that's just so cool. I actually like yours. I'm curious. Let's see what he. So, Alex's prompt was Leonardo da Vinci on a laptop asking Midjourney to design a flying machine for him, shot with a Sony mirrorless 35 millimeter photography cinematic, anti-aliasing, and then you even specified aspect ratio, 16:9, and you specified that you want to use Midjourney version 5. So, interesting. Just by putting Sony camera, I think you got more realism. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah. So they're Midjourney cheat sheets you can download. I'm not going to pretend to be a master prompt engineer at any of
Me
these
neither.
things, but just like you have cheat sheets for coding in any language, just like you have cheat sheets for literally anything, there are cheat sheets coming out for Chat GPT, Right Sonic,
Right.
Midjourney. You don't have to start from zero. Go steal what other people are doing on Twitter and in Discord, and then make it your own and figure out which pieces of the prompt are relevant to you and whatever. And now I'm getting pretty good at just piecemealing together the things that I think would make Midjourney art cool. So I think that's what is really encouraged here is all of these things are free and they're cool to try. So just if you go try them, you might be thinking about starting a project and you just want to design a logo for it. That's a great use case to just get on Discord, try Midjourney once, see if you like it, then go about your day, right? Like nobody's saying you have to jump all in head first and if you don't, you're wrong. So just go try it for something you're already doing.
Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed about the modern world is I feel like I can talk to anyone, but a lot of people have voiced that they feel more alone than ever. So it's kind of the unintended consequence of social media or the internet is I can just sit at home and look at other people's stuff, but we're not really connecting as people. So the Midjourney and the Discord community component is actually brilliant, and I only recently realized just how clever that is because now you can meet other people trying new stuff, and you might be surprised. Like if you're trying to start a T-shirt, I want to make quirky T-shirts with memes on it and sell it on a little website or whatever. You might find other people doing the same thing, and I'm not saying it doesn't replace human contact, but instead of feeling alone and lost because you're getting left behind from AI or whatever, join communities. Join a Discord where you can ask questions and see what other people are doing. And I've always been a huge believer in inspiration. I'll often, if I want to build a website, I'm not artistic enough in that regard to come up with some brilliant design. What I'll often do is just start going to websites that I really admire and try to figure out what is it about that I like. So this is one of the most interesting ways to quickly iterate on that. You could kind of go, hey, match this style, but add more of this, add this color, funkier font, and kind of play with some of these things and get it to work for you. At this point, what I was thinking, and this will be a fun challenge for Alex, let me know what you guys do for a living, right? How about this? If you, we'll I don't know if we should do a hashtag or do like a, I don't know, something. Just so we know that you're participating in this part. But let us know what you do for a living, and if you've been nervous or worried, like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen to me? And what we'll do is we'll try to come up with some concrete use cases of some of these tools and how they can actually benefit you and how you could actually use them to your advantage to be on the cutting edge of all this stuff, right? So let us know in the comments kind of what you guys do and how you think this might play in. So in the meantime, Alex, let's look at the future a little bit. So we kind of talked about Microsoft. They're rolling out some really interesting things, and as a result, they've just leapfrogged Google. And Google's always kind of been a company that dominated with search, kind of, in my opinion, struggled with most other things that they've attempted. And now Microsoft is kind of the cool company, which is bizarre. But looking forward, what are some trends you think are going to happen, or how is this stuff? We've seen art, we've seen research writing, some of the cool things that it does. What comes next? Like if you had to predict 6 months from now, like Christmas time, 2023, what are some things that you think might be happening?
I think we're going to start seeing generative AI design really cool 3D assets. So I don't know whether that yet means new cool designs for things like sneakers and earphones and like things we use every day, or if that's just going to be something that lives inside architecture, movies, video games, things like that. But Unreal Engine just had a really amazing demo at GTC where they talked about all of the ways AI is enhancing their workflows for environmental design, for designing characters, for generating plots on the fly and generating story arcs and generating character journeys and all that. So I'd be curious to see if what really happens to art, especially interactive art, is it just becomes much easier to generate much bigger games. And so the two big outcomes of that are smaller studios can generate AAA titles. So we might see indie games at AAA quality. That's my one guess. And then the other thing is we'll see a whole new category of movie where it's sort of this more immersive experience eventually, where it's like choose your own adventure inside this licensed universe. Like you're dropped off in this random spot in Tatooine, and the world is fleshed out and auto-generated enough, or the universe is, where you can kind of pick a direction and start exploring it. So two people who are watching the same movie can come back with two completely different experiences. I'm not really sure that second one is only 6 months away, but I bet it's actually like this decade that we'll start seeing, movies get replaced with this completely interactive environment where, besides one or two key characters that everyone must meet to start their journey or at critical points in their journey, you're sort of exploring a universe And if you decide to explore it together, you'll literally go in the same direction in that universe. But if you don't, you might walk away with two completely different experiences, even though you paid for the same thing, you know?
Very interesting. So Juan kind of mentioned a little before this live stream, if you play games like the non-playable characters typically are very vanilla and bland. They
Yeah.
have like 20 canned responses, and depending on what you say yes or no to, they say some things. It doesn't really feel immersive at all. It's clearly a game. It doesn't, Imagine just having an AI as the NPC and playing games where it's like, hey, what are you trying to do here? And you say something, and it's actually generating based on, like AI, and actually, giving you interesting things that are more immersive because they're related to what you're doing. Imagine, more tailored game experiences and stuff. There's tons of reasons to be optimistic for sure.
Here's
I
a
also like
feature I
what you
bet we'll sorry, here's a feature I bet we'll see in 6 months. Like
sure.
this winter, there will be, I hope, at least one game where you don't interface by choosing a dialogue, you interface, you use your voice and it does voice to text in the game, and you can actually talk to characters in the game. You'll be able to say, this is exactly what I want to say to this character, and the AI will generate that character's real responses if it was that character, and it will have text to voice back so you can hear the response. And there will be a game out there where you can talk to any NPC however you want.
That would be cool. How cool would that be? Yeah.
Like Grand Theft Auto 6, I bet that's a feature in Grand Theft Auto 6. Like
That can get yeah. That can get rated R very quickly, but yeah,
for sure,
I'm sure it will.
for sure. But like, and there probably is a way to make it PG, like force characters to only respond in family safe ways or whatever. But you can imagine a world where just that one feature changes absolutely everything about the rest of the game.
So people have kind of chimed in about what they do. There's some really obviously one of the reasons why I'm leaning into some of these chats with Alex, especially, is I know a lot of you guys are probably most of my audience is older. I don't have a bunch of 16-year-olds on my YouTube channel. So as a result, the fact that you're here, you're learning new stuff, I think is just so cool, and I'm hoping we can add value. We've seen some tech support specialist. That's interesting. There's probably some ways that prompts and chat GPT and kind of the AI movement can help there. Data engineer, now that's an interesting one because that is one of the really fast growing segments. A lot of the software companies I've been at, one of the fastest growing markets was like data scientist, right? And there's probably some very interesting ways that you could definitely use AI there, especially in the world of research, bringing in big picture data. And also Microsoft mentioned in their keynote, you could have this huge Microsoft Excel table with a bunch of data and tell it, go find the meaning or the significance of this data. And it'll try to find, like variations or deviations from the norm and try to find meaning in a chart. So, I mean, data science is an obvious one. And I don't think you should be afraid that you're going to be replaced. I think you should be thinking, how do I become the greatest data scientist with some of these tools?
Well, my background is data science, right? So I can speak to some more specific examples there too. So like think about when you get data and you're trying to do advanced things like decide how you want to segment the data automatically, right? Like what clustering algorithm do I use? What like is this a supervised or unsupervised learning problem, right? Like there's all these like questions that you even start with before you decide here's how I'm going to extract actual value out of this data. You can just ping ChatGPT and say like, hey, I have this kind of data set. It includes these features. It's from these demographics, whatever. I'm trying to do whatever, segment people by the types of movies they like, just as an example. Can you help me understand whether I should be using, I'm making this up on the fly, support vector machines or k-means clustering, which are two like very different ways of segmenting data. And ChatGPT will be like, here are the benefits and the drawbacks of these two techniques and what you need to make sure you have if you try either of them. And all of a sudden, it's like, that would have been 100 different Google searches, but you got it in one succinct answer. That's sort of a little more, great, now I can move on with like my really hard data science problem because I got the answer I needed real fast, right? Because somebody has solved this problem on the internet and it became part of that training data for ChatGPT, or with a plugin, it can just crawl Google and find it for you.
That's so fascinating. As far as like being succinct and getting answers, that's never more important to me than when I'm on my mobile, right? So if I'm on the go, my laptop in front of me, 10 tabs open. I can find stuff. I'm quite good at it. But I'm on the go. I have my phone. I'm trying to figure something out or do something bigger picture. That can be a challenge. And Alex, your last video that you just posted, which we have a link to in the description, is something that really interested me. And I kind of mentioned that we'll talk about it. I'd love to hear about it. You want to just give a little 1-minute summary? And then for people who want to do a deeper dive on how you're integrating ChatGPT with your phone, can watch your entire video. But you want to just give us a little rundown on kind of a concrete example of how that might help people?
Yeah, so the video is only like 10 minutes long. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but it actually is adding value to my life the more I use it. And the whole idea is I integrated Write Sonic to Siri, because what Siri does when you ask her to Google something is she'll just return the top 3 links. She'll say, here are 3 sources that might help you arrive at your answer. So that's not really useful when you're on the go, when you're driving, when you're running, when you're taking care of errands, and you just want the answer to something specific to you. ChatGPT doesn't solve that problem either, because if you're asking a recent question, ChatGPT's training data ends in 2021. So if you're asking about Tesla's latest earnings report or whatever, ChatGPT can't actually help you solve that answer. So the magic of Write Sonic is ChatSonic also cites its own sources, it can crawl the internet, and it has an API key. So when you integrate Write Sonic and Siri, you can say, hey Siri, use ChatGPT or use Write Sonic to tell me about Tesla's latest earnings call. And what she will do is she'll find all the right sources, she'll link 3 of the most important sources, and then she'll orate her summary. So the answer she gives you is, hey, here's what happened during the latest earnings call. Here's the metrics that matter the most according to these 3 articles. Here's where you can find more information, and you're hearing that. So I never take my phone out. It's something, I'm running. I have a question pop into my mind. I say, hey Siri, use Write Sonic to answer this question for me. It's just answered, and nothing changed. I didn't break stride on my run. I didn't look at my phone when I'm driving. I didn't yada, 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 right? So that's a real way that all of a sudden I have a extremely skilled, unpaid intern whispering in my ear answers literally as soon as I have the question, which wasn't possible before now.
So is the setup very difficult? Is it how long does it take? Do you have to have Write Sonic? What if you just have the free ChatGPT?
Yeah, so if you have... So it doesn't work on ChatGPT specifically because ChatGPT can't crawl the internet without the right plugin, and it was not trained past 2021. So it will work with ChatGPT, just to be clear, but you can't ask it about recent events. You're limited by ChatGPT's limitations. The magic of Write Sonic is it overcomes those exact limitations. It takes about 5 minutes to set up. I have a shortcut. The first link is to Write Sonic in that video. The second link is to a pre-built shortcut for iOS. So it's a shortcut that goes into your native iOS Shortcuts app. And then all you do is you sign up for Write Sonic, you grab your API key, you paste it where I tell you to in the shortcut, and you're literally up and running. The video is 10 minutes long. 5 minutes are me using the thing, showing you iterative examples of how to get the most out of it. And the other 5 minutes is just, here's how you set it up. So very quick.
That is a really cool feature.
And completely free.
Right. And the interface is chat with your phone. Like, hey Siri, right? Something people
hey
are
Siri.
very common with.
Something you already do. If you're an iPhone owner and you have Hey Siri, you're just adding...
I found this on the web. People are very common with. Check it out.
So you would just... How shortcuts work, just to wrap it up, is the name of the shortcut is what you tell Siri after. So if you name it Do Better, you would say, hey Siri, do better. And she would switch on that shortcut, and then everything you say after that runs through that shortcut. And because you're orating and these large language models accept human language, you're just saying, tell me about this, and the large language model is getting that as its prompt. That's the magic.
That's truly amazing. And that's a use case I hadn't really thought about before, but it does help, especially, I think some of this stuff, it's about unlocking things you never tried before. What's easy is to know, I do these things and find the pain points and solve them. That we're good at. But if you're anything like me anyway, what's much harder is to think of new ways of doing things. Like, I don't use the Hey Siri or I shouldn't say that. I don't use that feature all that often because previously the results were okay. There's some value there, but I was never blown away. But that's a new use case that I really could benefit from, especially if I'm just kind of busy doing something, and I just, like, to your point about like finding some quick information, or like, hey, I just heard this happen. Could you summarize it for me while I'm doing dishes or something? And just
Yeah.
have that information on the go, hands free, just from pushing a button on my headphones or something. That's new value, right? And that's kind of the big takeaway I would leave people with is there's going to be 10 new things you haven't even thought of yet that this will help you with. And the sooner you start to think about this stuff, the sooner you'll figure out what those things are, and it'll unlock new things in business or your personal life, whatever value you're trying to add to your life. I think that's kind of the way to do it, is to start getting clever. And that's why your video I recommended, because I love seeing those videos on my YouTube feed. It's just kind of like, hey, here's a new way to do blank. That's brilliant. I never thought to make, like, I never knew until embarrassingly recently, I could have it write code for me. And it does an incredibly good job. You can even tell it to like leave comments and describe your thought process, and it does it. It's just amazing. So anybody who's messed with like home automation stuff and always wondered like, oh, it'd be nice to make a script, but I don't know how to do it. You know how to do it now. You're officially enabled to write little scripts and code and Microsoft Excel macros. Everybody here probably uses Microsoft Excel or has in the past or does for work. Imagine, you can do incredibly powerful things. Alex, was it you that I was talking to? You have some really crazy macros that run and do all sorts of like background refreshing and stuff. Yeah, I mean, there's incredibly powerful stuff you can do that will save you a ton of time. And as the sooner we embrace it, stop being afraid and start thinking, okay, I want to be a part of this. I'm not, unless you're, 60 and you're retired and none of this really matters, then maybe you should watch Alex's channel on the investment side on how you can capitalize on these gains. Some companies I think are going to win out, some will lose out. That's going to be kind of playing out in the next couple of years. But unless you're retirement age, I wouldn't recommend that you just put your head in the sand. And I say this because I was kind of doing that. I was kind of, I don't need this. I do this, or it doesn't really pertain to me. It really does. Odds are, whatever it is you do, this does pertain to you. And I think if you start to have a healthy curiosity about it, you'll be much better off. I bring all this up because I know it's hard. I've been guilty of it myself. I was way more curious and excited about things when I was young, and now that I'm turning 40 next year. I think I'm older than you, right? I think you're.
Yeah. I'm turning 35 in a couple weeks.
So I feel that change. Now I'm like, I have kids. I got to look out for them. I don't stay up super late. I need my 8 hours of sleep. I feel like I'm in a different chapter, and it's easy to think, I really don't want. I kind of got my thing figured out. This is what I do. I think in the future, one of the smartest things you can be is just creative, clever, and curious, and just, I used to do that. Maybe tomorrow that will not be the case, but I'm going to be flexible and excited about doing it. And I think people who have that philosophy will be okay.
I just to the last thing you said, because I'm seeing it in the comments too. I do think if you're retirement age, you should absolutely jump in on this, because if you're anything like me, chances are by the time you retire, you'll have a bucket list of things that you've always wanted to do. Man, I've always wanted to write a book. I've always wanted to try my hand at music. I've always wanted to XYZ, right? Write a screenplay, whatever. These tools are the exact tools that will help you do that. I've always wanted to make my own comic book. And now with ChatGPT and Midjourney, I can have Midjourney make all the imagery, and ChatGPT help me build real dialogue for that comic book. So all of a sudden, I don't need to go think about, what is the artist, right? I can try 10 different art styles. I don't need to know everything about the history of the world I'm trying to build it in. I can talk to ChatGPT and craft a real narrative, So it's if you have a passion project that you've been man, I really wish I had the resources, time, and money to do this. Well, those resources, time, and money just became way more in reach for you. And if you're retiring and you're thinking about what's the first thing I'm going to pick up, maybe one of these generative tools can help you do that.
There's a really cool chat that I think is kind of summarizes much more eloquently than I could have, from Wildman Zen, who says, you have that one? There it is. I think I saw it right there. Yep. So he says, the key to success is lifelong learning. So that kind of sums it up for me. There's two ways you can think about this. Is we all think of learning as very important when we're young, but we have this mentality that eventually you go, okay, I got it now. Now I'm just going to take all that learning and just crank out production, make money, and breeze to retirement. That probably is not the way to think about going forward in the future. I think now you have to embrace and love the lifelong learning component. And I did not want to focus on the ramifications or the negatives or like the direness or whatever else, because we've done that before and we'll do it again. Today was really about concrete use cases and like different tools you can go mess with and start playing with today. But a lot of the comments are kind of, very doom and gloom. Um, Mr. Gonzinator says, these tools are the tools that will end humanity. And I think we've heard some of these things before. I know, people are always, there's going to be fear, and I think that's very well warranted. If you watched our live stream 2 weeks ago, we got into a ton of those questions, right?
Yeah.
Like, for example, that Mid-Journey T-shirt idea, that the green monkey in sunglasses snowboarding on a mountain. I love that picture. Now, could I just grab that picture and put on a T-shirt and make money on it? I have questions around kind of like, because if it was inspired by other people's art, is there like a legal copyright infringement component? We'll talk about that. I don't want to have my head in the sand. We'll do future episodes and live streams where we kind of talk about some of these different components. But today, I really wanted to just focus on the positive part and to tell you to get involved, get started. In a lot of these cases, it's free. It doesn't cost you anything to get started, and you can start messing with it. How about this, Alex? What are some of the, in your opinion, so Alex focuses really on tech, AI, investing, which is a component I do not talk about. I don't have the foundation or I don't have the confidence in myself to ever give that kind of advice. And this isn't financial advice, but could you tell me a little bit about the companies, the winners and the losers, if you will, right? So today, and then maybe looking forward into the future, who are the winners? Who are the companies that are going to really shine? And what are the companies that you're kind of nervous or worried about?
Yeah, sure. I think the companies that are going to be the biggest losers are probably the ones that are just really entrenched in a specific way of doing things, either because they're very, very regulated or they're very, very big and they have a lot of like corporate bloat. And so they're not quick to incorporate a lot of these new tools. And likewise, the companies that are going to win are going to be the ones that are agile enough or see the writing on the wall early enough to make use of these tools at scale, right? So think about Adobe. Adobe is one of the kings of content creation, right? You can't be a writer, an editor, a photographer without at least touching one Adobe product. And they're coming out with generative AI tools left and right. They have AI baked into Photoshop. They have AI baked into their stock photography website now. They have AI all over the place because they see the writing on the wall that a significant portion of assets are going to become generated by computers. You can imagine another company that's exactly like Adobe, but that's like, this is just a fad. I'm not going to pick it up and run with it. Real art is made by people, et cetera, et cetera. That company is going to crumble because Adobe's margins are going to be through the roof comparatively because these assets are being generated for near free, right? So imagine that use case everywhere. The version of CAD or SolidWorks that decides no generative assets ever. Real engineering is done by humans. Versus the same company that's going to be like, hey, we'll take your gearbox and we'll teach an AI to generate gearboxes in every situation, every type of drivetrain, every type of XYZ that we care about. And then we'll just let you choose the right gearbox for you. You put in the parameters just like you do with Midjourney or just like you do with Chat GPT, and it spits out the right gearbox. You know what I mean? That company is going places because guess what that company didn't do? Have a human sit down and design that gearbox, right? So its margins went way up. And you can do that for every sort of vertical, and you'll see real quick who the winners are over their next few earnings calls as they start saying words like, hey, we're starting to do this with AI, or hey, no, we're still doing this by hand, right?
The engineering aspect of it is interesting. But if you've trained it to do all these other things, I'm sure eventually you could, design a gearbox for a Mars rover that has this much torque and it has this gear reduction and has, can handle this much fatigue and life cycles and have it spit it out. And maybe even get like recommendations on materials and stuff. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Or it can even say, hey, I can't build a design for this without breaking the first law of thermodynamics or something. You know what I mean? It'll spit out why I can't generate my answer, just like we have all these safety layers for everything else. There's no reason generative AI can't extend to all the things that we expert humans can already do.
There's one, so that's really interesting. I keep thinking, what are the limitations and what could it do? And really probably the best way to think about this is don't put limitations on this because eventually this might do more and more. So for example, Juan, what was the company? Was it Runway?
Yeah, Runway ML, yep.
So Runway ML is a cool tool that Juan has been asking us to get a license for, and I think I'm going to do it right after this. But it has a couple, and all these people are really gracious. There's incredibly powerful tools for free. And then the paid version adds a couple of more features and stuff. But a lot of the stuff, you can do a ton of stuff just for the free version. But Runway ML has some really cool video-centric tools. So like, for example, right now, you ever watch those videos? They're very popular now where someone's like on site and then words show up behind their head. So it looks like they're like in the real world behind the person. And it's like really dynamic and really fun. Well, that's actually tough to do because you have to rotoscope or mask the person and separate them from the background and put it's a complicated thing. And in Hollywood movies in the past, it just took 100 hours to do or 50 hours to do. And it was a cost that was worth it. So Runway ML will do all that for you because it'll detect the subject using AI. It knows me, I have shoulders, here's my arms. And it'll break it out from the background, even if there's not a lot of gradient and contrast. Like I'm gray, the background's gray. That's not very easy to figure out. But it'll do that, break it out for you, allow you to have a cutout picture, add text behind it, like make better videos quicker, right? All this stuff is all about if I'm a YouTuber, I make YouTube videos. How can I research and write a topic better, faster, with more insight, with more tidbits, more interesting stuff? How can I make a video better? Well, if Runway ML can do that, that's another tool you guys can check out. Then great. If you make videos for your company and your videos always look so much cooler, there's all these cool stuff happening, you're gonna stand out as a person who knows how to use these tools. And that's kind of the end of the day. Because I was always thinking the video has been kind of lagging. Like, is there a mid journey for video? Can I go make me a 5-second animation of a monkey snowboarding downhill? And
Runway ML. Yep.
Really? It'll do that too?
Yeah. It's text to video.
Wow.
Oh, it looks like my
All right,
camera
that's a tool
just
we gotta
froze.
get. Alex kind of froze up a little bit. Let's see if he recovers. So that's interesting. Runway ML can actually do that already today, which is really cool. So there's another one that I've been using called Descript, which is, I'll put it in the text. It's just Descript.com, I think it is. And this one's interesting. The way Alex uses it quite a bit more than I do. But it's interesting because it'll take in a video and create a paragraph. Imagine taking a video and then just getting a written text version, and your video editing is just copying and deleting text. So you have a big, long 100-minute video. You can copy a paragraph and change a paragraph, and it'll move the video accordingly, which is really powerful. But it also has another feature where it'll allow you to train a voice model, and then you can. This is not to be like impersonating other people. This is to do you. So I can go in and say, here's a video of me in my previous YouTube videos, and here's what I sound like. And then if I'm on travel, for example, and Juan goes, Ricky, you screwed up. You said kilograms when it should have been pounds, and I got the wording wrong. That's actually really hard because if I'm on travel, I don't have my mics. There's no way to make it sound quite right. So this tool could actually, I could just enter a paragraph, enter some words, and it'll spit out an audio file with my speech. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. But I haven't actually used it yet because it's not quite perfect. And I'm curious if people would notice or not. Juan's mentioned probably not. But in a pinch, you could do that. Or if I was on travel or I didn't have all my gear, I could write a paragraph, make a YouTube short, post it really quick. And this is the stuff that I think I have to really put my hands around because I don't do enough shorts. I've been trying to think of a YouTube short strategy. Let me know what kind of YouTube channels and stuff. I think Alex is back. What kind of channels you like? Because I want to make fun, fast, 1-minute stuff on topics that we can't cover. So I truly believe that using these tools, Alex, I can make more content on my channel, right?
Yeah, I 100% agree. 100%.
I think I can do 2 shorts that are fun, and maybe they weren't quite good enough, or there wasn't enough there to do a full video, like a 10-minute deep dive. But it was kind of fun, interesting, and we could do a 1-minute short and throw it on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube Shorts and stuff. So I'm really looking at it as how do I grow this business to do more stuff with the same number of people, because I'm pretty happy with my team. I'm not trying to hire anybody else right now, but we could all be more productive, right? And I think that's kind of where I'm at with this.
Or for everyone listening right now who's not trying to scale a business, be more productive with the same amount of time, or, spend less time doing the things you already do. So maybe your 40-hour job is something you can all of a sudden get done in 32 hours. And then, that's 8 hours you don't spend working. But, if you're salaried and you're outputting at the level that you should be outputting, but in 32 hours instead of 40, you just got a full day a week back for the rest of your life, right? So those are the kind of games you should be thinking about playing and how they apply to your life and different ways you can find and get productive value back in your life, not just in terms of money, but in terms of just time, energy, right? So figure out what a painful bottleneck is for you, something that takes you really long to do, and see if one of these tools can help you. It's not guaranteed, but it really could.
Yeah, well said. That's really well said. There's so by the way, the artificer Smith, he kind of mentioned what he does. I think he's a toolist and machinist, and he does some cool stuff. I appreciate you. Thanks for joining the live stream. And he just says, like the only limits to your creativity are yourself and just what you can dream up, and that might finally be true. There's probably something in all of our lives that we've always wanted to do. Like I've always wanted to do blank, and it's never been more possible or easy than today, right? I want to write the next great American novel. I want to make a little 10-minute short or like a little animated short or something. I want to write a screenplay, whatever your dream is. Find out how you could use some of this stuff to make it more of a reality. And you got to just overcome the inertia of saying no and not and kind of being a naysayer, because if you're the naysayer and everybody else is embracing it, you can probably predict how the future will play out. It's not going to be as good. So, yeah. So Bong Hollywood, who's one of our fans and one of my neighbors, he says do a behind the scenes of some of what we do as the short. That could definitely work because we have some fun bloopers and goofy stuff. So that could work. That probably wouldn't need a whole lot of AI. Although maybe the Descript for text-based video editing could help there. We'll see. But yeah, hopefully this was a pretty good little roundout of different tools you can use to get started today. This is most of what I talk about is years in the future, but Alex and I are using the tools that we just told you about literally today.
Yeah.
And you can too. There's nothing stopping you. Don't be afraid. Get in there, play with it, figure out how it can help you, and try to form your opinions then, rather than write it off. Because I know that's tempting, but I really do think that there's going to be a lot of opportunities and future projects that arise from all this stuff. Video games are probably, now that I think about it, after hearing from Juan and you, one of the ones I'm most excited about. Like I'm looking forward to the next Zelda game having characters that are like alive, and when I play, it's totally different than when you play, because
Totally.
I said different things, I had different ideas, I did different missions in different orders and stuff, and it all kind of builds into the experience. So yeah, I think better gaming is one of the
There's so many
benign, friendly versions of what we can expect.
Yeah, there's so many games out there that already do like procedural generation. Just think of, I play this game called Diablo. It's a dungeon crawler, but like every time you loot, yeah, exactly. So like there's a new one coming out. I'm sure that one doesn't have this technology in it, but like yeah, we'll definitely play that game together. It sounds like
I played Diablo 3, every character all the way through to level 50 or whatever it was. I've been waiting for Diablo 4. It's coming out. Okay.
Yeah, it's like in 2 months. It's something ridiculous. So it's in beta right now. But like you can imagine a procedurally generated game like that turning into a generative AI generated game where it's like now the dungeon is just completely different and unique and different interactions, and no two people are experiencing the same thing at all. It's not just tiles that are moved and like procedurally generated. The actual content is generated on the fly. You'll get a quest that no one else will ever get because it's just completely hand built for you based on the way you've been playing for the last 40 hours and the character you met and whatever. And the last thing you see is something nobody else will see, right? That's going to start peaking. Video games are the perfect medium for that because you're already interacting with it and seeding the generative model with the way you play, right? So there will be no more difficulty settings. All of a sudden, instead of easy, medium, and hard, it'll fine-tune, adapt to the way you play because the generative AI will just say, hey, this player is a little more skilled, ramp this up just a little bit, just get him to the edge, right? There will be all the things that used to be these like really coarse grade adjustments will be really fine. And that's going to blow the doors open for video games, I think.
Isn't No Man's Sky is the huge world procedurally generated?
Yep.
So procedurally generated is interesting, and then AI generation is a whole other ballgame.
Other ballgame.
Just imagine what that would look like. Yeah, I like that. There was a comment about kind of there'll always be a place for like handcrafts and stuff. I completely agree.
Totally.
So if you make claymation, animation videos, you'll always have a place. People will continue to enjoy that. If you make handmade furniture and sell it, low volume, very high price to offset your time, there will always be a need for that. IKEA didn't mean that, handcrafted furniture went away, but it kind of shrunk. So rather, even in that scenario, I would say don't be a handcrafter because you don't know how to use AI. Be a handcrafter because you know how to use AI really well. You have that arm of your business, and then you also appreciate and love the human element, and you continue to do that as well. It shouldn't be because you have your head in the sand and you've just decided I'm never going to be a part of this other thing, and I want to live in the old school, because that old school part might shrink, right? It's typically right. I mean, do you agree with that?
I completely agree with that, actually, for a pretty different reason. So the video before this one, I came out with a video on Thursday that talks about actually this exact thing. So Unreal Engine is coming out with a whole bunch of tools where they also have this philosophy that handcrafting is really important. But what happens is you'll handcraft a 200 meter by 200 meter square piece of an environment, and that will be the seed for the generation for the rest of the environment. So if what you craft is a city block, it will craft the rest of the city around it. If what you craft is a dense jungle, it will use those same features to like craft the rest of the jungle. So the better your handcrafted portion is, which you can think of like a 3D prompt, for lack of a better word, the better the generative output will be, right? So all of a sudden, that skill in handcrafting becomes super important, because all the little mistakes that you'll make in your handcrafted version will propagate out to the rest of the generative model, So now handcrafting, it goes from not being replaced, but being the most important part of seeding these models.
That's interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. There you go. You could still be the person that you need, and be highly valued, and maybe, yeah, to your point, maybe more valued in the future by being that way. So, yeah, Lax Lifters Mario says, I think more Iron Man suit and Jarvis instead of Skynet when thinking about AI. I think that speaks a lot to your attitude and kind of where you stand with it, and I think that's a winning perspective. Now, that's not to say there's not dangers and there's not things that we should be worried about, but if those things concern you, speak up, start to form conversations around this stuff. These are early days. Whenever there's a Wild West, things start out crazy, and then eventually we settle into a more, equitable and fair world. But it will take time and it will take voices. So definitely don't. I'm not trying to come out here and just make it sound like everything's going to be great and rosy. I think we're going to have struggles like we always do. Nothing's ever easy. But yeah, it's a fun world, and I really want to take a quick minute to thank Alex for just being one of the great voices that I've really leaned on for some of the stuff. I signed up for Write Sonic because of Alex. I started using Chat GPT directly because of you. You mentioned there's some benefits there versus Write Sonic, and there's limits and things to every tool. But I really got a chance to learn from some of just the time you've spent on doing this stuff, and I really appreciate you. And we will definitely do more of these series in the future where we can bring up more components to this. But hopefully, this is a fun way for people in my audience, my community, who probably aren't thinking about AI all the time like your audience is, to think about AI a little bit more. Because we do this for you guys to remember this is important, and this is one of those things you got to try to get your hands around. And there's a lot of resources and stuff, and hopefully we've covered some of them for you today.
Yeah, this is a blast. I'm always happy to help. I think it's a really great service that you're doing. I think the more people we can get to try these things today, the less people that will feel left behind a decade from now. And I think as somebody with a parent who is very technologically illiterate, it means the world to me that people are willing to try, get their feet wet, because in 20 years, who knows what kinds of ways these will shape human-to-human interactions, just like text messages do today, right? So grateful for the opportunity. And thanks for having me on.
I appreciate you. Looking at the comments, there's a ton of questions around, when does AI gain human rights and stuff. We will cover that.
That'll be our next episode.
Yeah, we'll do a future live stream on the big picture and more of the nuance to it. But thank you guys so much for watching. Huge thank you to Alex. Thank you for taking time. I appreciate you, man. Enjoy the rest of your day out there. Hopefully Florida's been nice and sunny. It's finally warming up here in San Diego. And we appreciate you, man. We'll talk soon.
Talk soon. Thanks for having me.
Peace.